If not for the mostly impressive modern-looking special effects, Shazam would feel completely like a movie from a different time. Not in the sense that it's a throwback to the way the character was conceived in Fawcett Comics almost 90 years ago. This is actually a fairly modern 21st century take on the concept, characters, mythology, etc. that profoundly gets what's made them timeless without relying on anachronistic nostalgia. Instead, the earlier era Shazam sensibilities feel to have hailed from are the mid-90s, back when superhero movies, apart from Batman maybe, were shaggy and rough around the edges, but also frequently loose and playful, built more around the character's central novelty and supporting cast rather than how much of a panel-to-screen sizzle reel one could get together for Comic-Con. It's an imperfect movie that feels too long in some spots and undercooked in others, but ends up being part of its charm, the kind of movie that feels like people making it couldn't believe what they were gonna get away with. In any case, the how the hell has this not been a movie 50 times already premise here is that the lead superhero, who, yes, used to be named Captain Marvel, yes, it's a long story, no, there's no real significance to it here, is secretly an ordinary young boy who can take the form of a grown-up-sized Superman-esque demigod by speaking a magic word gifted to him by a wizard. And now you know why this was at one point more popular with kids than Superman itself. As in the comics, said boy is one Billy Batson, here aged up to be just a bit to be a high school student, but still a streetwise orphan who's just been welcomed into Philadelphia's most adorable foster home, but still can't wait to run off and continue his desperate search for his long-missing mother. But he's sidetracked from that when the wizard Shazam taps him as the surprising chosen one to absorb the powers of 7 ancient mythological beings. Well, 6 mythological beings and the biblical King Solomon, who may or may not have existed historically, I guess, which allows him to become a full-sized superhero, a power that he and new foster brother Freddie Freeman, a self-styled expert on the caped crime fighters inhabiting the rest of the DC Extended Universe, which this does definitively take place in sometime after Justice League, immediately put to use doing pretty much exactly what you'd expect 2 teenage boys to do with this situation. Make viral videos, pull pranks, do stunts, get themselves into or out of mischief, and eventually stumble their way haphazardly and then somewhat guiltily into actual heroism, largely because a serious threat arrives in the person of Mark Strong's Dr. Sivana, an embittered maniac who feels he was cheated out of powers like Billy's as a boy and as a man has aligned himself with the embodiments of Shazam's mortal nemesis, the 7 deadly sins. And the resulting film is one that I just honestly can't say enough good things about. Shazam is easily one of the best, most unique, original, and different superhero movies to hit in a while. A bold breath of fresh air that feels like all the best parts of the classical foundations of the genre, but also a wholly separate thing from anything else in the zeitgeist. It's a fun, family-friendly action comedy, but it's got a weight and a sense of meaning to it that the funnier Marvel movies tend to avoid, while also being more sincere and earnest than most of the DC movies have been. It's not dark, but it's mischievous. Think Ghostbusters, Goonies, Men in Black, the middle years Harry Potter movies. See, there's a grittiness here, but not the performative, edgy insecurity sense that defines that word in most of these movies. It's authentic grit, sincerely informed by the working-class Philadelphia setting and characters. Billy and Freddie do a lot of their adventuring in underpasses, alleys, junkyards, etc., but you never feel like the film is straining for atmosphere. It's because they're kids and they're poor. I love that Billy is realistically standoffish and traumatized by the way he's had to grow up, but still recognizably a child, and then recognizably a child trying to do an impression of what he thinks a grown-up is as Shazam, when played by Zachary Levi in a muscle suit. I love that Freddie gets to be a character who is a disabled kid, but allowed to be kind of a dick about that fact that this is his life. You never see that in any movies, and it's refreshing. The other kids in the foster group home are great fleshed out characters. They're diverse in age, background, gender type without feeling like a checklist, and they have a really fun role to play in the story. Cooper Andrews and Marta Milans are terrific as the parents who give off a great subtle vibe of these are like the sweetest possible people you could ever hope to meet, but also I would not mess with them. And you know, it's not like the movie hangs a big neon look at how socially redeeming we are sign on itself about this, but most of the time when you see the adoption system or a foster family in movies, it's either negative, or if it's positive, it's rich people with a lot of extra resources helping out as a project, but this isn't that. You know, Shazam gives us this working class, diverse foster family in a group home that's jammed and messy and a little bit chaotic, but functioning and supportive and positive, and for narrative reasons that works because the story needs us to work out emotionally that this is a real home that Billy should be fighting for a little bit before he gets that, but it's also just really good to see, you know? And I get the sense that people, maybe a lot of people, will see themselves, aspects of themselves, their community, neighborhood, etc., represented in ways they usually aren't in this movie, and that's pretty cool. Now, the superhero action stuff kicks ass as well, don't get me wrong. I'm talking about it less because, honestly, like 80% of it didn't make it into the trailers, and I don't want to give it away. There's a really cool mix of practical and digital effects, nice balance between comedy and serious action, and big fight scenes. The flying and super strength gags are nice, and all the more since it's clear they didn't have all the money in the world to spend on this, and they got creative with it. But yeah, more than half of the big action stuff, including most of the bad guy stuff in the entire third act, which Please, people, don't spoil the end of this movie for audiences because it's awesome. The studio deserves a lot of credit for not blowing it in the previews. Let people enjoy the surprise. Did not get given away on this. How often does that happen? The only thing that doesn't totally work here is the villain, Sivana, and it's a stumble with the best of intentions. Mark Strong is fine in the part, which is a big departure from the Sivana of the comics, since literally every mad scientist ever has ripped him off by now. It's more that there's a lot going on in Shazam, and almost all of it is meaty, emotional character stuff, like the sad and or scary parts are really sad and or scary in this, like as kids movies go. Wasn't expecting that. Not just lore and mythos for the sake of it, so it's very much doing the Marvel thing where the hero's real enemy is his insecurity and personal demons that he has to overcome, and usually you have a generic, uninteresting bad guy to balance that out. But instead, Sivana is a complex villain with his own agenda, backstory, three-dimensional characterization, origin, motives, arc, subplot. He's actually really interesting, especially as a parallel to Billy, and there's just maybe too much of him for the amount of movie that it all has to fit into. Still, too much, generally preferable to not enough, and Shazam gives audiences a lot of movie for one ticket, especially if you brought the whole family, because there really is something in here for everybody. This is a fun, funny, exciting, action-packed, thrilling, big-hearted, sincerely felt family adventure movie that rates with the best of the superhero genre, and honestly, what minor critiques I might have about clunky exposition or villain screen time feel canceled out by how overwhelmingly the majority of it works, and how magnificently all the threads coalesce for that all-time blowout of a third act. So yeah, I'm gonna say 4 stars. Shazam is a terrific movie. I loved it. Everybody should go see this. I had a blast.